When you start to learn mental skills, which is the specialty that I teach now, over the years, I train on this. I train how to get yourself mentally fit so when the hits come, you know how to deal with them. It doesn't mean it doesn't hurt. It doesn't mean it's not hard. It just means you have the tools to get back up faster. I was the Phoenix Suns mental skills coach, get done with the season with them, and I have the worst stroke of my life, and I can't really talk well, speak, walk, and I'm thinking, how am I going to do this? Well, I used the tools that I wrote in the book to help myself literally get back, and I got back way faster than most would.
Dar, we share some. I'm going to start with a couple similarities because both Italian families. My grandmother was Sicilian, and big food family. I've heard you describe everything in your family like everybody just lays it all out. You'll argue, you'll walk away, you come back, everything is fine. Nobody worries about it anymore. Like that's the perfect Italian family. And so I feel like that's a great connection for us.
Yes.
And listening to that, it also helps me understand your messaging. It helps me understand some of your resilience, some of the things. Your story is unique because you had essentially an injury through a chiropractic, a routine situation that changed your life. Share it with our listeners, because before we talk about your teaching of the art of bouncing back, share with our listeners how you had to bounce back.
You know, the point that you're talking about here is, I want to go back for a second. When I was 16 years old, not many people in our family had gone to college. You know, they were tradesmen. My mom was a barber. My dad was a tool and die maker. Everyone, they were kind of entrepreneurs. They found their own way. They started their businesses, a lot of them. But when I was 16, my grandpa had a stroke. And when he had a stroke, I remember saying to my father at that time, I want to go to college. And he had not gone. And he's like, well, what are you going to go for? I'm like, I don't know yet. And he's like, well, you're going to have to figure that out before you just go. And I thought, but I'm going to pay for it. So can I just figure out as I go? And he's like, no. Well, ironically, my grandpa has a stroke. The occupational therapist that walks in to help him, she just sparked something in me because she was working on his cognition, his mindset. And I thought, what is that? And that ignited something in me. So I went to school to be an occupational therapist, get out. Ironically, so that trigger point was the OT working with my grandfather had a stroke. I go to school to become an OT. I end up getting out and specializing in neuro, working on a stroke and brain injury unit. And then at 25 years old, I'm working, married my college sweetheart. To me, I'm living the American dream, Scott. I'm like, from where I came from, life is amazing. It's going great. I'm going to start a family. I just bought the book, What to Expect When You're Expecting. My parents are like out of the gate. Let's go. We need grandchildren.
Yeah, I get it. I
So,
get it. We expect
yeah,
it in our families. We expect
yeah,
it quick.
exactly. So that's my next kind of thing that we're going to do. I'd hurt my back at work. I go to the chiropractor. I get adjusted. When they adjust my neck, they rip the artery to my brain and I suffer a stroke. And I don't know that I'm bleeding and I don't know that a blood clot is forming, but that's what happened. So I suffered a stroke. I didn't have paralysis, but it messed up my vision, my perception, my speech. And I will tell you, at that age, I masked everything, Scott. I was sitting there going, oh my gosh, you just told me that I have a blood clot in my brain by the time they found it, that I could die any day, and that I can't have children. All this came at 25. He said, no, no, no. This is what happens to the people I take care of, not me. And I didn't have the tools that I have now to deal with it. And so I just kind of pushed my way through, and I thought, I'm going to mask this and I'm just going to get through this, which is not how you handle it, problems or adversity. And then the long story short of this is, ironically, over the years, unfortunately, but fortunately, I've had 3 strokes total. And the last one was just about 4 years ago. And that was my worst one. But here's the difference. When you start to learn mental skills, which is the specialty that I teach now, over the years, I train on this. I train how to get yourself mentally fit so when the hits come, you know how to deal with them. It doesn't mean it doesn't hurt. It doesn't mean it's not hard. It just means you have the tools to get back up faster. And I saw this in real time, not knowing, again, all of my life expertise would help me. but here I am now at that time, I'm in my 40s. It was just 4 years ago. And I have this third stroke. I was the Phoenix Suns mental skills coach, get done with the season with them. And I have the worst stroke of my life then. And I can't really talk well, speak, walk. And I'm thinking, how am I going to do this? Well, I used the tools that I wrote in the book to help myself literally get back. And I got back way faster than most would because I didn't like it, but I just committed. And I thought, number one, I know what to do. Number two, this actually isn't my life to live. I'm here because God wanted me here. Because if I would not, I would have went the other way. So I have to. My thank you back is that I have life. So I've got to get up. I've got to get myself better, and I've got to do the work I'm called to do. Because we're on a mission. All of us are on a mission, and that's what got me back.
I love that. And I love the fact that you bring in your faith, because I think a lot of people are afraid to talk about the true root foundation to what I've felt personally has kept me through all levels of adversity. When I've found myself struggling in anything, just things that people wouldn't even know about, and that are internal. It's been the greatest thing for me. And I've had great conversations with my mom, especially because we were always, I went to Catholic school.
Yeah.
I had the whole background, right? And I was an altar server, and I always felt connected, but you go through your college years and you kind of separate and you look for all the reasons to not be connected to the
Easy.
correct source. Yeah. But it's like anything else. It's no different than the art of bouncing back. It's us bouncing back to understand the foundation that got us there. I was talking to my mom the other day, and I said, I called her and I thanked her. And I just said, I don't know if I say thank you enough for giving me the foundational structure to go through tough things. It helps me be a better dad. It helps me be a better husband. It helps me be a better version of myself every day. And what you're talking about when you say bouncing back is, when you think that you're here for something bigger than yourself, it probably does get a little easier each time. It probably does.
Yeah.
You have the recipe. You
Yeah.
have the recipe.
And you're not doing it alone. I really believe, I joke around, I said, faith is like Red Bull, it gives you wings.
Yeah, it is.
Because it gives you hopes. You understand you're not doing this on your own strength anymore. There's a bigger purpose. And there are so many what I call God winks, things that just remind you that there is absolutely something bigger that is overseeing our lives in this world, because things that we just know we've seen that maybe should have gone the wrong way but didn't. How could that happen? Or that you get through something that you thought on your own strength you would have never made it. You're not alone. You're not alone.
It's such an uplifting message. And when you're not alone and you're going through the steps that you've laid out for somebody's life, it's the foundation. I have my youngest son has written his goals on the wall. So both my boys play competitive soccer. My oldest he's playing Division I college next year. My
Nice.
youngest is playing for an MLS academy, and he moved away. So it's been a crazy
Yeah.
dynamic for our family, but he's very driven and disciplined. I bring this up because at like 7, he wrote down his goals. He put a cross on the wall in his room with tape on his own, and then wrote all the things on the wall. And each year, I always tell the boys, I'm like, hey, I want you guys to lay out your goals for the next year. And he would often tell me, Dad, I don't need to relay out my goals. They're on the wall. And so when he moved up to live with the new family and to start over again, he rewrote his soccer goals on the whiteboard that he had in his room. And I came in and I said, hey, I noticed this isn't the same way you wrote them the last time. So I'm going to go ahead and draw a pyramid on your wall here. And I wrote God at the foundational bottom. I wrote family above it. And then I wrote, goals or success or soccer or whatever it is. And I just wanted, and I was curious to see if he would erase it. Like,
Oh
honestly,
yeah.
like he's
Yeah.
14,
Yeah.
but the reason I bring it up is I I'm constantly trying to reinforce what I know at 45
I
has
know.
got me through those challenges. Cause without that, that's the challenge. That's the struggle with a lot of these things.
I love that so much because obviously working in the pros with a lot of the athletes I work with, I will often start with, just tell me what's your relationship with faith? And just to get a sense, do they have any? Do they have a connection? And what's interesting is I never force any of this on anyone. And over time, them just us walking, because we usually walk years together in their journey. I had it one time where this guy, right before an NBA game was to start, he sat me down. It's 20 minutes before start time. And he says, Coach, can you tell me your testimony with God? And I was like, wait, what? And he said, I've just watched you walk out life. And he's like, there's just something there I want to know. And I thought, do we even have to play an NBA game? Like, do we really even have to play? And then another friend of mine, was going through something and he just turned to me, and he's in hockey, and he just said to me, can I get what you have? And he's like, you and some other people I know, he's like, you have the consistent thing with you guys is that you have faith. And I said, oh, it's open to all. You could have it right now. And so I say this because just like your mom instilled it in you, you've instilled it in your son. We all every day instill it in others without knowing, just by getting up and walking this out. Because if you see it, if you see us when we hurt or when we fall down, just like I saw it, and my inspiration was an Italian couple, Mary and Vinny, who brought really me closer, grew up in the church, but they really had me to create this daily walk with the Lord. When I saw them walking it out, I go, oh, this really is real. This is real. You could apply this in life. And it changed my life.
Well, I think it starts with gratitude. So I think one of the things
Yeah.
that's really hard to get through is, you know, you look back on your life, you see all these patterns, and we can look back on your story and see, okay, you're 25, you're married, you're ready to have, children, you're looking for the next
Mhm.
big family, and everything changes in your life. But now the people that you're healing and helping, you wouldn't be able to do if your life went the same way as you expected it to go. And
Yes.
one of my aunts, I come from a big family, and I'm the oldest grandson in an Italian Catholic family. So my mom has five sisters and a brother. And I just did a podcast earlier, and we talked, and I said in the beginning of my book, I actually refer to myself as, I felt like Simba coming out, and they were holding me up because everyone was under the age of like 20 when I was born.
Yes.
So it was
Yes.
all teenagers, and that energy and that love was so infectious. But one of my, I mean, all of my aunts were extremely impactful, including my uncle, but they were all impactful. But one of my aunts didn't have any kids, and her not having children
Mm.
was one of the greatest things that ever happened to me,
Yeah.
because she helped guide my life in ways that I cannot tell you were like when I got into the financial world, she was like, hey, I think you could do this. And I was just complaining, I'm not going to be good at anything. And I was just venting to the safest space I knew. Right.
Yeah.
And she was like, no, you'd be great at this. You should try this. And I try it. 21 years later, I run a company. I've had great success. I'm so grateful. I feel like the calling that we each get
Yeah.
impacts other people's lives. And so to be next to that person before they start that game, or to walk with Mary and Vinny, was it? What was
Yes. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, well, Mary's easy to remember, but and Vinny's a great
And
name.
Vinny's, Vinny.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
so
my cousin
Italian.
Vinny, my cousin Vinny. But it's I just feel like it's meant to be. And when
Yeah.
you start with gratitude, and I start going back through all the things I'm grateful for, it starts with, man, I feel so blessed to be where I'm at today. Gosh, I feel so great that you could help so many people, and that we can have a platform
I know.
to talk about this stuff. I mean,
That's
it's
a,
huge.
that's really what's amazing. We could impact so many more lives right now. This is where it's like how do you use social and these platforms for good? It's this way. It
And I
really is.
and it's slow too, isn't it? Like that we were talking earlier, it's slow, but when your message is good, it's like a good relationship. It's supposed to go slow.
Yeah.
If it goes too fast, you can't actually appreciate it.
No, and you know what's crazy is just when you started and you start talking about depth, I pick a word every year. I pick a word, and last year's word was next level. I just knew things were the book. I just knew it. I just knew in my heart, and God was also saying like, "Let me drop the motor, stop rowing, let me do what I'm supposed to do, and you back off." And that's I did. I just showed up all year. I just kept showing up all over the world. I would just show up. But this year, my word's depth. And that's not typical. I'm usually like an action word, my whole personality, and the word was depth. And I was like, whoa. And because I don't like superficial, I don't like superficial conversations, transactions, people treating people that way in business or life. And I said, we have got to have more depth. And I just saw a marketing trend for 2024 is more long form content instead of the short, which I want to go do a video on this because I'm so excited because two reasons. One, we're going to get more depth and quality. Two, the people that really listen want it. And number three, focus is the number one commodity. We are losing the ability to focus. If I coach anything, I'm always coaching about focus. And just, I mean, look, we got it so our brains only attend to 6 seconds now. That's content. And I said to someone, I need you to understand how impactful this is. When I worked in the hospital with brain injured patients, my goal was to get someone with a brain injury to attend, Scott, for 30 seconds. We can't even get our country to attend to things for more than 6 seconds. I thought, we have got to change this. So, with this trend, I believe, like everything, the pendulum swings one way and it's got to come back. I believe as much as things get chaotic and we don't know what the year holds, people want more. I think people are getting tired of transactions and they want more depth and quality.
Well, I am so anti-transaction. I talked to people about this. I literally had this conversation about 10 minutes before I walked in and set record on this interview. I was talking to a young business owner who does work for us, and him and his wife have cleaned our building, and they do my house, and they're just amazing humans. And we were talking about relationships and transactions. And I said, listen, be careful not to grow just to grow, because
Right.
I've done that in my career and I've done that in my life. And then you feel empty when you accomplish something because you're not actually identifying what this career, this business can do for your family or who you love or God, whatever you want to build
Right.
towards, but it should be priority, not priorities. And, so we started talking about that and it started about depth. And I said, listen, just remember, who are the people you love working with? That's the depth. Every transaction you have, that's what you say, hey, I'm not going to be able to continue next year.
Mm-hmm.
And you move
Mm-hmm.
away from that because that's drawing away from us. And,
Oh,
um,
I love this. And
yeah,
you know what this made me think of? In sports, everyone wants to know what's the depth of your bench. Think about it. And you're talking about who you want to walk with, who you want to work with. You're saying, like, let's create depth here because that's depth of the bench. That's depth. That means you have depth around you. So no matter what happens, someone goes down, you got someone that's going to pick it right back up. You have depth in your world. And man, that just fits. If you want longevity in life, have community and have depth around you.
Yeah, and on the bench, how important, like culture, I think, to your point about the inability to focus, culture on the bench is really difficult because think about when people get together, how many of them have their phones out in their face, right? If
Mm-hmm.
they're not even able to concentrate on the other humans across from them, they don't know their families, they don't know their lives. The teams that will build, that will be great, will be the teams that build culture.
Yep.
I'm a big Duke basketball fan, and I love Coach K and I love what he stands for. And Coach Shire's doing a great job over there.
Yeah.
But they have the brotherhood. And that's how they talk about this. And they come back and they watch each other in the playoffs when they make it the NBAs, and they come in the NBA, they come back to
Yeah.
Duke and they all sit together. Like there's a culture and I'm sure not everybody fits the culture perfectly, but I love that mentality.
Yeah.
How do you see that in sports today?
it's one of the examples that comes together is I'm here in Scottsdale, Arizona, and the Diamondbacks made it to the World Series. And one of the things, I got interviewed on the news for them, and they kept talking about team chemistry, and they kept saying, Dar, everyone keeps talking about the chemistry of this team. Does this really play a part? And I said, 1000% it plays a part. We could go back. I study patterns of greatness. And if you go back and you study the patterns, one of the things is depth and chemistry, connection, that there's a brotherhood. All of that is literally proven in science now, because if you look at what bonds people, when there was a team, and I think it was the Cleveland Indians when they played the Cubs, but when there was a rain delay, and they during the World Series, and they had to go back in the locker room, and instead of people getting on their phones, they all were connected. And so when they came back out, they were better. They played better, because a rain delay could take you out of your flow, but they came back just as locked in because they didn't just all go to their phones. And I see that a lot in sports. When you get people together and they all just go to their phones, I said, you guys, you need to stay locked in as a team. But players and people that love and connect with each other, they show up better, they play better, they have more enjoyment. And anytime chemistry's off, I'll tell people all the time, go share a meal together. Literally the whole team. And in the pros, they'll go, Dar, we did that in college. I go, and it worked. Why would you stop it?
Yeah. Well, I think we all do that in business and anything. You find things that work, and then you think they're remedial because you've outgrown them. But you
Yes.
haven't outgrown them. Those are the very things that make your culture the culture. And
Yeah.
there's also that you also have a role. Everybody has a role on a team. And you or we're the energy people. We're the ones we notice what's going on around us.
Yep.
We're paying attention to who's loving it, who's hating it, who's not buying into what you're saying. Like, you can feel all that. And then you're trying to pull everybody together. And just trying with the person that's not buying in makes them feel important. And
Yes.
you're building a culture that's built on something bigger than just winning, because winning is the transaction, right? And
Oh, yes.
that's not good enough. You are going to win if you build the culture correct. And you have the talent. You got to have the talent.
And by the way, you're not going to win every game. You're not going to win every day. So whether this is business or sports, more often than not, you're having challenges. And so when you win, it makes it that much better. And so if you're only feeling good, winning feels good. But I mean, if you can't find joy in the journey, it's going to be a long damn journey, because not everyone wins the Super Bowl. Not everyone wins the cup. More often than not, you're just working on this journey to get there. And so it's loving the process, it's loving the people that you're climbing the mountain with. And then what happens from there, usually something great happens when you put these all in place. But even if it doesn't, you're so grateful that you've climbed with these people.
Yeah, it's funny. I've had several conversations with professional athletes, and nowhere near the level that you have. But what I found interesting is, growing up, I loved playing sports. I loved playing soccer, but I loved to win and to play games. I was
Yes.
not in love with the process, and that wasn't what I became professional at. And so, as a professional in business, I love building business. I love the process, right?
Yeah.
I love the practice. I love the challenges. So one of the things that I've watched my both of my boys, but my youngest son especially, he lives to practice.
Yeah.
And it's funny, it's taught me so much watching his dedication and discipline to even I will sometimes be like, "Hey, dude, you could take a break. Like, you want to take a break today?" And he's
Yeah.
like, "Dad, I have a regime that I have to work. I have this coach sent me this." And I
It's
never would have followed that if somebody said it to me, ever. I just said, I know a better way. And so the reason I bring it up is I'm just interested in your take with the dedication to practice. How do you see that with pro athletes? Would you say that there's a percentage that, is it like 80% of the athletes love the practice and love the process? Is it like 50-50? Like, what do you see on an everyday when you're coaching somebody?
Yeah. I would say it more often than not, it's probably 80-20. And I definitely know some of the people that are like,
Yeah, the
you know,
talented.
yeah, I'm great. I don't love this. I don't love, I mean, I have someone who's like, I cannot stand working out. He's in the pros. He's like, I hate it. Where another guy says, give me the regiment. And here's the thing, everywhere in life, there's a difference between good and great. Now, these guys are really good. They made it to the pros, but there's a level in the pros too. And the greats are obsessive about the details. And if you want to be great in business, you want to be great in your relation, everything, there is an obsession to the details and the process, because how do you become great? You practice that craft so that when the game winning shot comes to you, you're not as nervous. You're like, give me the ball. I'm ready to take this because you've practiced relentlessly. And, even in my own career, I for sure have people that will be, Dar, you're obsessive to a fault sometimes. And I'll go, if God has called me here and he's the greatest, he's the true GOAT. If he's called me to help the best of the best, why would I not want to be my absolute best when I serve them? It doesn't even make sense to me to be any other way. And that's how the athletes feel that truly are going, making the mark from good to great. And I see it. And I just had a conversation with one of the players and I said, I need you to know God has a calling on your life and he separated you from the pack. Your consistency and your discipline is like nothing I've ever seen. And I said, it will be marked as greatness. Stick with the process. You just know when you see it. I mean, I can't even imagine watching what little Michael Jordan, looked like when you didn't know he was Michael Jordan, but you would have seen this young man just be so relentless to look. Even when he was on the show, The Last Dance, he was like, I should have won 7. He
Yeah, he
was
didn't
still
stop.
obsessive about it.
Yeah, and it's almost for Michael being the greatest, it's almost like if our greatest strengths are turned up too loud are our blind
Yes.
spots, right? And so
Yes.
what happens if we get too obsessive about something, and again, you might excel at something to the level that Michael Jordan did basketball, but it's also challenging to your family. It's challenging
Oh,
to your
exactly.
personal life, the gambling, there's so many other things that come in because you need that high that you'll
Yeah.
never ever get again the way that you got it when you were winning championships. And all I could think about was the pain that he
I
was feeling when I was watching that show. Like I was like, man, Michael, there's got to be a way that you can break through this because it's,
yeah.
but I don't know. Maybe God made him to be so obsessive and so amazing to inspire so many young men and women to be great at something that
You know what?
I don't know.
I love that you brought that up because when I watched that, that's exactly the sentiment that I felt when I watched it was, I cannot believe there's still so much pain in this guy's heart. And so I'll say a couple things on this because this is important for people. This is why you need a coach or a mentor or an advisor or someone around you, because on your way to greatness of whatever that is, life, relationships, yes, I want everyone to be the best they can. You're going to need someone along your side so that it doesn't become the demise of you. And then the other part of this is I do believe if you look at some of the brightest people, there was almost an unhealthiness that comes to it, and they isolated a lot. They isolated a lot and they didn't have that person, and I wonder what would have happened if they just had a little bit of an outlet. They could still be great. I don't think that anyone's life when they're at the greats of the greats, I don't think there's a word called balance. You just cannot. And so you just have to, I tell people when I know it's coming, I know there's a certain player I'm working with, I literally will say to them, whoever you start dating, let them know this is not going to be the normal relationship. It's just not. So if they start expecting that, they're going to get hurt. You have to know who you're loving. And if God is calling them to walk this journey, which means there's going to be a lot more sacrifice, you need to understand that in them. And then you have people around you that help you to do this in the healthiest way that you can. But some people are set apart, which means there's going to be sacrifice. And I don't believe in the word full balance when you're playing in certain arenas. It's just too hard.
I don't know if true balance ever exists if you're doing anything that is extreme or
Right.
high level, right? I mean, I know that I just spent a year in business doing some things that were way off balance and my whole life was imbalanced and but I kept reshuffling. I kept doing the
Right.
difference between this version of me and a decade ago was I had one priority, and that was my faith at number one, my family at number two, my business at number three. And they were all in alignment, but I tried to just zero out everything else. I think what happens though is that you get misaligned, you get imbalanced. It's how you are self-aware that we
Yeah.
pull ourselves back into alignment. And
Yeah.
it's like Tom Brady is what kept coming to my brain as you were thinking. I'm
Yeah.
like, I don't know anything about his family. I don't know anything, but it seemed like they had a pretty good scenario, and he decided to do that one extra year. And it was like I think everybody that's a football fan was like, go ahead, Tom, do an extra year, but that's transactional, right? They just want it for them. But
Yes.
anybody that loves their family, that
Yeah.
loves humans, that wants to see them thrive was like, Tom,
Yeah.
bail, man. Just bail.
Yeah.
Like, go home. Build the year. Like, get obsessive about your son's football career. Like, get
Right.
obsessive about something outside of winning.
Yeah.
But he's
That. Yeah.
unbelievable.
That's why having the people around you to help you, because we're going to get in our own way. When you're on this mission, you get in your own way. It just is. And I would say for people on this thing of balance, when you're a high performer, you just know there's going to be seasons, but it's about communication. So, people in my life, people that I've worked with, I'll say, hey, you need to communicate. This part of the year, this year, we're growing the business. It's going to take more of me. So, I'm not going to be as involved in some of the family activities. I'll be there. So, it's going to be quality over quantity. You're going to make those micro moments count, but this year is the year we're going into battle. So just like our military leave, they're going into battle. They have to leave their families. I mean, that's the ultimate sacrifice here. So it's going to happen for us where as long as you communicate, and that's what I tell the guys, communicate with the people around you. I'm in season. This is the expectations. But when I'm out or when I have a day off, this is what we're going to do. Then everyone goes, oh, okay. And you know what you're supporting. Same for me, this book tour. Literally was all over the country, 3 cities a week, every week for almost a year and a half. I can't even tell you. I think it was hundreds of speeches. No one saw me other than I showed up in a city, but I made when I showed up in a city count with the people that I saw. But I couldn't, there was no consistency here in Scottsdale. I was on tour, off limits, but I said, hey, I got to go all in. God's called me to this. So let's go because I don't know when the next opportunity is coming. And that's the same for us. You seize the moment. And then this year, I get to have more depth. I get to have more time because I put in the work. So everyone just needs to know, plan it out. It's like climbing the mountain. Here, right to my left of me is Camelback Mountain.
Camelback Mountain.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, when I first moved here, I started hiking. I'm like, oh, I'm in shape. I was 10 minutes in, I was gasping for air. And I thought, I got to stop. And the point was, I stopped to catch my breath. I didn't stop climbing the mountain. So just catch your breath. And that's how this journey of life is. There's going to be seasons you have to grind to be in. And there's going to be seasons where you're going to have a little bit more time, but it ebbs and flows, but it's never a perfectly balanced wheel. So please don't put yourself into that trap because then you'll always feel like you're letting yourself and others down. And then you won't be able to feel gratitude in the moment.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think in going through challenging years, one of the things that I find really interesting, I've been married for it'll be 21 years in May.
Nice.
And I bring that up because what I didn't realize early in my life that turned out to be a very great decision is two big factors that help high performers in relationships. So if I'm a professional athlete, a professional basketball player, or anybody, and I'm looking for my partner,
Yep.
number one is a strong family. So
Yes.
someone that comes from a strong family background, they love their mother, they love their father. If it's
Yep.
a daughter that has a great relationship with her father is a great rooted, foundational, amazing thing that builds confidence that you can't ever take away.
Hmm.
And my wife has that. And number two is is independence. Like I've noticed in my life that we often will go in completely opposite directions, but we end up in the same space and we're
Yeah.
always together. And there's not the distractions. Like I don't mean independence like girls' night out or guys' night out. I mean independent living. Like she does her thing, she does her workout, I do my workout. Like
Yeah.
we both have core values that are the same, but they don't have to be done together. And if they
Right.
did, I would be a horrible husband for her
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I am way too intense. I'm way too over the top. I'm way too much of a coach. So I'm going to tell her everything she's doing wrong, every single like, and all the things she's doing great. And she's going to be like, "Can you just tone it down a little bit?" Like that's who we are,
Yeah.
right? But as I think about that, and I'm thinking about the
I love that.
athletes that you coach, those are the things that come to my brain that I'm like, man, after going through a very, very difficult, challenging, successful year, what was valuable? Well, when I was gone for 15 straight days and on the road doing different things for the business, and I
Yeah.
come back, it's like everything was there and she was cool and I was cool. And that's so valuable.
That word autonomy comes to mind, that you have your autonomy even within it, because one of the best examples I ever heard was by Craig Weatherup, a dear friend. He ran Pepsi, CEO of Pepsi. And so he had 300,000 employees. He's all over the world. And Connie and him, his wife, to this day, they're more in love today and they've been together forever. And you know what brought them together was when they started, they every year would write individual goals and couple goals. And then he's working all over. Every month they had their date night where they would meet and they'd go over, how are you doing on your individual goals and how are we doing on our couple goals? And they allowed each other to continue to be individuals while continuing to be a couple together. And they still do this all these years. They're in their 70s and they're still in love. So to your point, Scott, you're on the money, hence 21 years together. The journey will continue because you're allowed to still be you, because God's calling each of us on our own mission, but he does bring us together collectively to our person for that mission as well. But you have to understand each other and you can't make someone that they're not.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great. Tell me, you have the privilege of coaching so many great athletes. Is there anybody that you often reference or talk about as that's really made an impact on your life? I know as a coach of any kind, I think sometimes it's not talked about enough the reciprocated
Yeah.
impact someone has on your life as
Hmm.
you coach them, like
Yeah.
the mentor mentee relationship is often the opposite. Like I'm gaining more out of coaching you than you're gaining out of coaching me, or vice
Yes.
versa.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Does that make
Um,
sense?
Gosh, so many examples I want to come to mind. But first, let me start. I feel like I'm giving like an Oscar speech. I want to thank my mom and my dad. No, but really, I want to start there because they were walking examples. Even how they tripped up, even how they walked it out. My mom was so damn resilient. It was unbelievable. All the things that she went through. And she said, God still has me here. I still have a purpose. I learned resiliency. My dad was the dad that was the coach. We would literally watch film, Scott. We would watch film, watch the New York Giants on Sunday, and then rewatch film on Wednesdays when I was a little kid. He also had me out when I was practicing. I would practice sports, and then he'd have me 2 hours after practice to say, it's not the practice that makes you better, it's the habits and the patterns that are great that make you better. So these are all things that obviously are instilled in me for coaching right now. And then the other part is Mary and Vinny, who I got to walk out what it meant when they mentored me. They called me out when they were like, you could be a better leader. You have to do this, this, and this. When I was in my 30s running a company, and they're like, you could be better. And they called me up and they called me to be a better version. I was like, at first you're like, whoa. And then you're going, okay. But if I'm really being called to what God's calling me to, my front stage needs to meet my backstage. So they help me. And then the last point of this is, so many clients I coach, man, I'm helping them, but they have no idea how much they're fueling my soul. And a specific amazing quarterback in the NFL that we all know that retired, he, I can't tell you how much I learned from him while he says he learned from me. It's just class act, standard leadership things that continue, I think, validate the point that we're the outliers, the ones that excellence is our standard, that the world is like, oh, you don't have to do this, and they want to shortcut it. I don't even relate to that. So often I feel uncommon and an outlier. But when I'm coaching the people I coach, they're symbiotic. They're in such alignment. And when I see them doing it, I'm like, yes. And it fuels me. And I go, I'm right where I'm supposed to be.
Yeah, you have to be around some of the people that have that same energy as you. And sometimes in professional sports, there's a lot of people that share that energy. And so there is a sisterhood, a brotherhood,
Yeah.
a commonality. But in
Yep.
business and in the real world, even in friend groups, like you can find yourself where you're sitting in a room full of people you've been friends with for years, and there's no commonality. Like
None.
everything you do every day, like they're talking about how challenging their day was, and they had like one thing that like threw them off, and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't remotely tell you the 20 people that I had meetings with today that this went on. Like,
Yeah.
and I'm not saying in any way, by the way, that one is more important than the other. It's just that there is this energy level that is, it's an intensity and an energy level, a goal to be great at whatever you do. And when you're pulled away from that, you could feel like you're not at your home base. And so being surrounded
Yeah.
by people like that, it's really valuable.
It is, and I think that that's an important part that I had shared when I wrote The Power of Your Environment is so important. I mean, from the things, what you, I don't care if it's a one room place you're living in, make it so that it's something that inspires you. Your environment inspires you. Make it so that your community, your tribe inspires you. So the version you want to be this year in 2024, make sure the people that are around you all have that similar framework so that you're fueling each other. Because if you're trying to be a better version, which I want to be a better version every year, I better damn well have the right people around me so that I'm elevating. Because if not, I'm sinking to the common denominator. And so I want people that are pushing me to be better every year. So the power of your environment includes the people, the places, the spaces, the thoughts, the habits, the routines. This is all part of your environment, which is so important to be great, which is find your tribe that's going to help you be that.
You hit on something that I think is really interesting, and that is in professional sports, the correlation. If you want to be great, you have to practice against the greatest, right? You have to continuously play at a higher level.
Yes.
And a lot of times in life, we don't think like that. You know,
I know.
if it, you know, if you want to be the best teacher, you want to be surrounded by the best teachers, not the ones that don't care every day, but the ones that love what they do and want to make an impact every day. If you're the, and so just finding the tribe, even in your own community, can be very
Yeah.
valuable.
Yeah. And I think it takes courage too, because sometimes you wake up and you're like, these conversations are no longer serving me, or the people or the friends of the circle. This, if the circle becomes a cage, you can't fly. So you're going to need to get out of that cage and find a new circle, because you can't grow if people are keeping you locked down. And sometimes people, unfortunately, their own fears are not doing the work. If they get scared when you're going to fly, because if they don't want to do the work, it starts to be a mirror on them of where they aren't. And that gets hard too. So just understand when you go to do this, it's going to be a little bit hard of a transition sometimes, and you're going to have to say goodbye to certain things, but it's not, it's just saying, hey, this chapter no longer, it's been written and it's time to write a new chapter.
Yeah, and you know what? I think one of the things that I've learned, I've been thinking and talking about this a little bit more lately. I've noticed some of my oldest friends are back in my life in bigger ways. And so I think one of the things that we should remember is, life has a way of putting the right people. God has a way of putting the right people in your life when you need it most. And so when maybe you find yourself not grounded, all of a sudden you find one of your
Yeah,
childhood best friends in your life, and you're connected in a way that nobody else can connect with you because they knew you before you are this version. And when you're
I love
constantly reinventing yourself, it's funny because sometimes you take that for granted. And
yeah.
one of my childhood best friends and I have hung out a lot in the most recent years.
Mhm.
And I love that. I love the
Yeah.
ability to have someone know who I was, who I am now, and still love me through all of it. And like
Mhm.
that is I think
Gold.
that's like, yeah, it's just it's friendship goals. It's like it's just like my wife. I mean, if we are not who we were 21 years ago,
Mhm.
thank God. But if she didn't have patience, we would have never actually been able to get where we are today because I'm a lot. So
Yeah, yeah.
um, but
But that's pure gold. What I was saying is that's gold. That is something that is so invaluable and
right.
priceless. And God knows a way of bringing, I mean, really our whole lives. If you're open, the people will come in and they will be the people that are supposed to be around you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Goes back to right the beginning, full circle. When you put your trust in the Lord, He's like, I created this world. What you think I can't bring the right plan or person or thing into your life? I just think he sits there going, when something works out, we're like, oh my gosh, he's like, I'm God. What are you like? Of course I could do this.
Yeah.
But
I
he's
mean,
just waiting for us to surrender to letting
that's
him lead.
That's the word. So the word for me last year, it wasn't my word of the year, but it's the word I hung on to the most was surrender. There was
Mm,
so much out of my control
yeah.
and so many things that were great, but just challenging. And so surrender is a really hard thing to do when you're a control freak and you've been like
Yeah.
you're building and building and building, right? And this year's word of the year, I do a word of the year as well, and
Okay.
it's presence.
Oh,
And
I love
so,
it.
with that comes patience, but presence is one where it's just enjoy. I have no problem with my give a shit factors 1,000% wherever I'm at, whatever I'm doing, whatever conversation I'm having. And that can be great. It could also be like, is this the Italian pasta we bought? Like, there's got to be a better pasta. This doesn't even say it's made in Italy. Like, I care way too much about things that I shouldn't care about. But
I
I
love
want
it.
to I want a presence that actually gives me the ability to appreciate the beauty in each day and not be so fast
Yeah.
um going
Yeah.
through life that you forget how great it was while you were standing right there in that spot. And so
Yeah. Oh God. I just want to say something on that because I now have lost my mother and my father in the past my father just last year and my mom 4 years ago. And Scott, I know everything is, hindsight. And I'm way more present now in my life than I was a long time ago. Because when you're in your 20s, you're like, you're just going. But I wish I was more present in the times that I had with my parents because all my mom wanted was just for me to be there. And I lived across the country or somewhere else more often. And I thought, gosh, if I just gave her more hugs, I mean, I hug a lot, but, or I just listened to that conversation or I just watched the something with my dad and so I know that it's hard, but I just want people to know you will wish you had more time with people that you love. So please be more present in the moment because you will never regret that. And I really don't have regrets in my life except for this. This feels just in the most recent years. I just wished I'd spent I couldn't spend more time because I know I needed to go do what God called me. I've been on a mission. And like Jesus says, he didn't even have a home. You got to go. But I do wish the time that I was there, I was more present with the time. And I'm so much more intentional now about it. So if that offers or helps anyone listening, and for your word of the year, but if you have the people that are in front of you, be more present with them.
Yeah, and it's less of a regret and more of just an awareness. And sometimes an
Yeah.
awareness becomes something where we feel a little pain associated with that awareness, because
Yeah.
it's natural.
Mm-hmm.
I've been deeply thinking. I mentioned this earlier in a conversation, and I've talked about it multiple times on this podcast. And if you make it this long in our podcast, then you actually like listening to us, so that's a good thing. But I've had the pleasure of doing several eulogies for my grandparents, and one of the things I've been contemplating recently was just the value of a living eulogy, where
Yes.
how many times do we not say what we love about the person that's right in front of us? And you know, these are the things that as we get older, we get better at,
Yeah.
but it's not always easy, and it's not always easy for everybody. And there's always a relationship where it's maybe easier than one. And you know, I could say things to my mom way easier than I can say things to my dad. I'm the
Sure.
oldest son. Like I'm the first one you try everything on. My oldest son and I, we're close, but like I could say my youngest son says more he says, I don't want to say that, I want to say it the right way. He says things and talks to me in a different way, but he didn't get the strongest version of me. He got a refined version of me. And so
Right.
our relationships are different. And so I just think I've been contemplating and thinking about your point, which is that no regrets, but it starts with maybe thinking about the very things that you want someone to know about your life and how much they meant to you, like
Yeah.
Mary and Vinny and some of
Yes.
these people that are here. You know,
Yeah.
it's just a really valuable thing to talk about with people.
We started doing with this group that I'm a part of these pretty much videos that we share with people. So the people that we love, we actually do a video and send it to them, and to that point to let them know now how much they mean to us. But all of it is awareness. You're right. And the more you have awareness and the more you do this life long enough, you start to figure it out. So
Yeah.
it's like that expression: in school, you learn the lesson and then take the test. But in life, you have to go through the test to learn the lesson.
Yeah. Well, the resilience that you've shown and the art of bouncing back is obvious. And Coach Dar is doing big things. Tell everybody where to find you, how to get
Sure.
a little more of your messaging, and how to hire you. Anything that you could do to get our listeners out there to know more about you.
Go to coachdar.com. So Coach Dar has everything there that you need to know. Every Thursday, I put out a newsletter that gives you literally mental tips to handle this journey, just like I would share with any of my athletes or CEOs that I coach. Stay connected. Instagram, I'm on all the social platforms, but Instagram, I'm probably the most active on. So you could follow along there. It's at the Coach Dar. And then stay tuned, because this year I'm putting a 2-day experience on that'll happen a couple times a year, that is going to be an experience, and it's going to help people show up better to life and walk away with something. Much of this conversation is a part of what that experience will be. So stay tuned for that too.
Well, I love it. I'm following. I'm on Instagram. We are watching Coach
Yes.
Dar build and develop to your calling. Thank
Thank,
you for the work you do. Thanks for joining us on the show.
thanks so much for having me. And for anyone listening, go get the book. I can't coach everyone, but that's literally the principles I use with people. So thanks for having me on, Scott.
Thank you. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. If you liked it, there's more where this one came from. Click here and enjoy some more.